The wind howled a mournful dirge across the desolate moors, mirroring the tempest brewing within Alara's heart. From above, the sprawling kingdom of Silvermoon, ancestral home of the werewolf pack, looked serene and untouchable. But down here on the fringes of its territory, Alara, a princess by birth, felt the cold sting of exile. Her hand instinctively cradled the swell of her belly, a constant reminder of her transgression and the reason for her impending doom. "They will disown me," she whispered to the wind, her voice choked with despair. "My family, my pack. Everything I've ever known will be gone." Alara had always been a creature of two worlds. A young werewolf princess, revered within her pack for her hunting prowess and unwavering loyalty, she possessed a spirit that yearned for something beyond the rigid structure of werewolf tradition. She was a skilled huntress, swift and deadly, yet her heart remained vulnerable, easily swayed by the whispers of affection and the promise of a different life. But she was naive, especially in the treacherous landscape of love. Her world was meticulously ordered, governed by ancient laws and unwavering customs. Every aspect of her life was dictated by her lineage and her duty to the pack. Then came Liam, a human traveler with eyes the color of the summer sky and a smile that could melt the polar ice. Their love was a forbidden blossom, blooming in the shadows of prejudice and fear. Secret meetings in hidden groves, stolen moments under the watchful gaze of the moon. Their romance was a fragile rebellion against the established order. The allure of the forbidden was intoxicating. Liam represented everything Alara was not: freedom, spontaneity, and a world unbound by ancient traditions. He told her stories of faraway lands, of bustling cities and sun-drenched beaches, painting a vibrant tapestry of a life beyond the confines of Silvermoon. He admired her strength, her spirit, and the wild beauty that set her apart. He saw her not as a princess but as a woman, and that was enough to make her fall. But joy is often a fleeting visitor. Their secret was discovered. The consequences were swift and devastating. Alara's parents, the Alpha and Luna of the pack, powerful figures steeped in tradition, reacted with a fury that shook the very foundations of Silvermoon. Her pregnancy was not a miracle but a monstrous aberration, a stain on their pure werewolf lineage. Their disappointment was a crushing blow, their love replaced by cold disapproval. The Alpha roared his condemnation, his voice resonating with ancient power. The Luna wept silent tears, her heart broken by her daughter's betrayal. The disownment was formal, a public denouncement before the entire pack. Alara was stripped of her title, her birthright, and banished from the pack lands. The weight of the situation crashed down upon her, suffocating her with its enormity. She lost everything: her family, her home, her identity. She was cast out into the wilderness, alone and pregnant, a pariah amongst her own kind. The pain was unbearable, a gaping wound in her soul. As she stumbled away from the familiar embrace of Silvermoon, whispers followed her like shadows. Whispers of a different kingdom, far to the east, ruled by a mysterious and powerful figure, an Alpha King. A name that carried both promise and dread. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Alone and exiled, Alara's journey became a brutal testament to survival. The once pampered princess now faced the harsh realities of the wilderness, a stark contrast to the sheltered life she had known. Starvation gnawed at her belly, a constant reminder of her responsibility to the life growing within her. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent shivers of fear down her spine. Wild animals, predators of both the forest and her kind, stalked her through the shadows. She scavenged for berries and roots, her hands raw and bleeding. Sleep offered little respite, haunted by nightmares of rejection and the looming uncertainty of her future. The elements were relentless, baking her skin under the scorching sun and chilling her to the bone during the cold nights. Despair threatened to consume her, a dark tide pulling her under. Amidst the hardship, memories of Liam flickered like embers in the darkness. His face, his voice, the gentle touch of his hand. These were the treasures she clung to, the anchors that kept her from drifting into the abyss. She remembered their shared dreams, whispered promises of a future where their love could flourish without fear or prejudice. They had envisioned a small cottage by the sea, filled with laughter and the warmth of family. He had promised to teach her how to paint, to capture the vibrant colors of the world on canvas. He had spoken of a life where she could be free, where she could be herself, without the constraints of her lineage. These memories were both a source of comfort and a sharp reminder of what she had lost, fueling her determination to protect the child that was a living testament to their love. Her journey wasn't only fraught with natural dangers. Alara encountered humans, their faces etched with suspicion and hostility. Prejudice against werewolves ran deep, fueled by fear and misunderstanding. Some hurled insults, others threatened violence, their words laced with venom. She was an outcast in their eyes, a monster to be feared and reviled. These encounters reinforced the societal divide that had kept her and Liam apart, a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. She learned to conceal her true nature, masking her scent and avoiding eye contact, desperate to avoid confrontation. She was forced to confront the harsh reality that her love for Liam had not only cost her her family, but had also placed her in constant danger from those who could never understand. As she pressed onward, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversations, whispers carried on the wind. Travelers spoke of the Alpha King, a figure shrouded in mystery and power. Some described him as a benevolent ruler, a just and compassionate leader who protected his people. Others painted a darker picture, portraying him as ruthless and unforgiving, a tyrant who ruled with an iron fist. The stories were contradictory, painting a confusing portrait of a man who seemed to embody both hope and fear. One conversation stuck with her. Two merchants huddled around a crackling fire spoke in hushed tones about the king's absolute power, and how he showed kindness to everyone, man and beast alike. With each passing day, the wilderness took its toll. Weakness gnawed at her. She was running out of options. Facing imminent danger and driven by a desperate hope, Alara made a momentous decision. She would seek out the Alpha King. It was a gamble, a desperate plea for refuge and protection. But with her strength failing and the odds stacked against her, she saw it as her only chance, a last desperate hope for survival. The Alpha King was her only salvation. The whispers of his name echoed in her mind, a beacon in the darkness, leading her toward an uncertain destiny. She would brave the unknown, face the potential dangers, all for the sake of the innocent life growing within her. The journey would be perilous, but she had nothing left to lose. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Alara finally reached the borders of the Alpha King's territory. The change was palpable, a stark contrast to the wild, untamed land she had traversed. Where before there was only wilderness and hardship, now stood meticulously cultivated fields, orderly forests, and roads that seemed to stretch on forever. The air itself felt different, charged with a subtle energy, a testament to the king's power and influence. Imposing stone markers etched with the king's insignia, a snarling wolf's head encircled by a crown delineated the boundary, a clear message to all who approached. This land was under the protection of the Alpha King. As she ventured deeper, the landscape became even more impressive. Towering mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks shrouded in mist, guarding the kingdom like ancient sentinels. Fortified villages dotted the countryside, their inhabitants appearing prosperous and content. The very soil seemed to thrive under the king's rule, a stark contrast to the barren land she had left behind. The kingdom exuded an aura of order and prosperity, a testament to the king's leadership. She could sense the magical wards, subtle yet powerful, humming beneath the surface, protecting the land and its people from harm. This was a kingdom built on strength and stability, a haven from the chaos and uncertainty of the outside world. Her progress was soon halted. Two guards, clad in gleaming silver armor emblazoned with the same wolf's head insignia, emerged from the forest, their faces grim and impassive. They were imposing figures, their eyes narrowed with suspicion as they assessed her weary appearance. "Halt!" one of them barked, his voice resonating with authority. "State your business and your purpose for entering the Alpha King's territory." Their hands rested on the hilts of their swords, a clear indication that they were prepared to defend their land. Alara, her heart pounding in her chest, straightened her back and met their gaze. She knew that her appearance, disheveled, pregnant, and clearly a lone traveler, would not inspire confidence. "I seek asylum," she said, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "I am Alara, and I have been disowned by my pack. I seek refuge under the protection of the Alpha King." She swallowed hard, trying to project an air of confidence that she didn't feel. The guards exchanged skeptical glances. Disowned? One of them scoffed. And why should the Alpha King grant you sanctuary? We have strict laws against those who bring trouble to our land. Their eyes lingered on her swollen belly, their expressions hardening, especially those who consort with humans. The other guard stepped forward, his hand tightening on his sword hilt. Turn back, he commanded. We cannot allow you to pass. The Alpha King has no need for your kind. Desperation surged through Alara. This was her last hope, her only chance to protect her child. Please, she pleaded, her voice cracking with emotion. I am with child and I have nowhere else to go. I only wish to find a safe place to raise my baby, away from those who would harm us. I swear I will not cause any trouble. I will abide by your laws and serve the Alpha King with utmost loyalty. She emphasized her pregnancy, hoping that the sight of her vulnerable state would soften their hearts. My child is innocent. Please have mercy. The guards remained unmoved, their faces like stone. Our orders are clear, one said, his voice devoid of emotion. We cannot allow you to enter. Turn back now, or we will be forced to use force. They began to advance, their swords glinting menacingly in the sunlight. Alara braced herself for the inevitable rejection, her heart sinking with despair. All was lost. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind them. Hold! A figure on horseback emerged from the trees, his presence commanding immediate attention. He was a knight clad in shining armor, his face hidden behind a polished visor. The insignia on his chest proclaimed him as a high-ranking advisor to the king, a figure of considerable authority. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, his voice sharp and authoritative. Why are you barring this woman from entering the kingdom? He urged his horse forward, his gaze fixed on Alara. There was something in her eyes, a desperate plea that resonated with him. He sensed that there was more to her story than met the eye, and he was intrigued. He saw a miracle. Subscribe now to continue to the story. The knight dismounted, his movements fluid and graceful despite the heavy armor. He approached Alara, his gaze piercing yet not unkind. Tell me, he said, his voice low and measured. Why do you seek an audience with the Alpha King? He listened intently as Alara recounted her story, her voice filled with emotion as she described her forbidden love, her disownment, and her desperate search for sanctuary. The guards shifted uneasily, their initial hostility replaced by a grudging respect for the knight's intervention. He listened patiently, his expression unreadable, absorbing every detail of her tale. When she finished, he remained silent for a moment, as if weighing her words. Very well, he said finally. I will grant you an audience with the Alpha King. But be warned, he is a stern and formidable ruler. He does not suffer fools, nor does he tolerate deceit. You must speak the truth, and you must be prepared to face his judgment. He turned to the guards. Escort her to the castle. See that she is given food and water, but keep her under close watch. The guards nodded, their faces still grim but their demeanor more respectful. Alara followed the guards through the towering gates of the castle, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The castle was a marvel of architecture, a sprawling fortress of stone and steel, its towers reaching towards the sky like defiant fingers. Banners bearing the Alpha King's insignia fluttered in the wind, a constant reminder of his power and authority. She was led through a maze of corridors and courtyards, each more opulent than the last. Servants scurried about their duties, their faces averted as she passed. The atmosphere was heavy with formality and unspoken rules. Finally, she was brought before the throne room. The doors were massive, crafted from dark wood and reinforced with iron, adorned with intricate carvings of wolves and warriors. The guards pushed them open and Alara stepped inside. The sight that greeted her was both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The throne room was vast and imposing, its high ceilings adorned with shimmering chandeliers that cast a warm glow upon the scene. Courtiers and advisors stood in hushed reverence, their eyes fixed upon the figure seated upon the throne. The Alpha King Kale was a man of immense presence. He was tall and powerfully built, his shoulders broad and his posture ramrod straight. His face was stern and handsome, etched with lines of experience and authority. His dark hair was streaked with silver, a testament to his age and the weight of his responsibilities. But it was his eyes that captivated and unnerved Alara the most. They were a piercing shade of blue, sharp and intelligent, capable of seeing through any pretense or deception. He wore a simple tunic of dark leather, adorned only with a silver wolf's head pendant, a symbol of his status and his connection to his people. The weight of his authority was palpable, a tangible force that filled the room. Kale regarded Alara with a cool, detached gaze. He gestured for her to speak. "You seek sanctuary in my kingdom," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "Tell me why I should grant it to you." He listened intently as Alara repeated her story, her voice trembling slightly under his intense scrutiny. He questioned her closely, probing for any inconsistencies or lies. He detected her scent, the unmistakable aroma of a werewolf mated with a human. He knew she was carrying a forbidden child. "And you claim to be carrying a human's child?" he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. Alara nodded, bracing herself for the inevitable condemnation. "Yes, Your Majesty," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I am." To her surprise, Kale did not erupt in anger. He did not denounce her as an abomination. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Tell me," he said, his voice softer now. "Do you know of the prophecy?" Alara shook her head, confused. "What prophecy, Your Majesty?" Kale sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "An ancient prophecy," he said, "foretells of a time when a werewolf and a human will unite, their offspring bringing balance and prosperity to the kingdom. A time of darkness will end when the blood of both races is combined." He looked at Alara, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of hope and apprehension. "Perhaps," he mused, "you are the key. Subscribe now to continue to the story." Kale's words hung in the air, a beacon of unexpected hope amidst the despair that had consumed Alara. He offered her sanctuary, protection from the storm that had ravaged her life. But it wasn't out of simple compassion, she soon realized. His piercing gaze held a different kind of hunger, a calculated interest that made her skin crawl. He saw her not as a person but as a vessel, a means to an end. Her child, the innocent life growing within her, was the key to fulfilling an ancient prophecy, a prophecy he clearly intended to control. "I will grant you sanctuary, Alara," Kale declared, his voice echoing through the throne room. "But not without conditions. Your presence here is solely for the purpose of fulfilling the prophecy. You will remain within the confines of this castle, and you will obey my commands without question. Furthermore, you will allow my scholars and healers to study you and your child. Your body, your blood, your very being will be under my observation." Alara's heart sank. This wasn't the salvation she had envisioned. It was a gilded cage, a prison disguised as a haven. She had traded one form of captivity for another, exchanging the prejudice of her pack for the cold, calculating control of the Alpha King. Mistrust coiled within her, a venomous serpent whispering doubts and fears. She looked at Kale, his face an impassive mask, and saw not a savior but a manipulator. Yet what choice did she have? She was alone, pregnant, and vulnerable. To refuse his offer was to condemn herself and her child to certain death. I agree," she stammered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "I accept your terms, Your Majesty." Kale inclined his head, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "Good. You will be given comfortable quarters within the castle walls. You will want for nothing. But remember, Alara, your freedom ends here. You are under my protection and therefore under my control." He dismissed her with a wave of his hand, signaling the guards to escort her away. As she was led through the labyrinthine corridors of the castle, Alara couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The opulence of her surroundings, the shimmering tapestries, the polished marble floors, the intricate carvings felt suffocating, a stark contrast to the wild, untamed freedom she had once known. She was given a spacious suite of rooms, furnished with plush carpets, silk curtains, and a four-poster bed draped in velvet. Servants attended to her every need, bringing her delicacies to eat and soothing balms for her skin. Yet despite the luxury, she felt like a prisoner. The walls seemed to close in around her, the gilded bars of her cage shimmering in the candlelight. She wandered through the rooms, touching the silken fabrics and admiring the ornate furnishings, but finding no comfort in their beauty. Her thoughts were consumed by Cale's words, his cold demeanor, and the unsettling glint in his eyes. He wanted something from her, something more than just the fulfillment of a prophecy. She sensed a hidden agenda, a darker purpose lurking beneath the surface of his benevolent facade. That night sleep eluded her. She tossed and turned in the plush bed, haunted by nightmares of Cale's piercing gaze and the whispers of the prophecy. The castle seemed to hum with an unseen energy, a palpable sense of power that both intrigued and frightened her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was a pawn in a much larger game, a game she didn't understand but knew she had to play. She longed for Liam, for the warmth of his embrace and the comfort of his simple honesty. She missed her family, even with all the rejection. But the weight of the baby growing inside her was her main concern. She knew she had to be strong for her child's sake. She had to unravel Cale's secrets and protect her baby from whatever darkness lurked within the walls of this opulent prison. This deal with Cale may cost Alara her life. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Cale's observation of Alara began almost immediately. He was a constant, unsettling presence, his shadow falling across her path like a persistent omen. He would observe her during meals, during her walks in the small, enclosed garden, even during her attempts at sleep, his presence radiating through the thick stone walls. He never spoke much, but his eyes, those piercing blue orbs, scrutinized every nuance of her behavior, every flicker of emotion that crossed her face. He questioned her about her life with the pack, about her relationship with Liam, about the changes she felt within her body. He was fascinated by her connection to both the werewolf and human worlds, viewing her as a living bridge between two disparate realms. He seemed particularly interested in her transformations, the shifting of her bones and the surging of her wolf spirit. He requested detailed accounts of her experiences, peppering his inquiries with arcane terminology and esoteric theories. Alara found his fascination unnerving, a violation of her privacy and a constant reminder of her status as an experiment. She was a specimen under a microscope, her life dissected and analyzed for the sake of the prophecy. It was isolating and dehumanizing. Despite the luxurious surroundings and the constant attention of the servants, Alara felt profoundly lonely. She was surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. The courtiers and advisors treated her with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, whispering behind her back and casting furtive glances in her direction. They saw her as an outsider, a tainted princess who had defiled her bloodline and brought shame upon her kind. She longed for the companionship of her pack, for the familiar comfort of her family, even with their disapproval. She missed the camaraderie of the hunt, the thrill of the chase, and the simple joys of life in the wild. Most of all, she missed Liam. The memory of his smile, the warmth of his touch, the sound of his laughter. These were the treasures she held close to her heart, the embers that kept her hope alive. She wondered where he was, if he was safe, if he ever thought of her. She imagined him searching for her, his heart filled with worry and despair. She yearned to see him again, to feel his arms around her, to tell him about the child they had created. Surprisingly, amidst the tension and mistrust, a slow, grudging respect began to develop between Alara and Cale. He saw her strength, her resilience, her unwavering determination to protect her child. He witnessed her quiet dignity in the face of adversity, her refusal to be broken by the weight of her circumstances. He saw glimpses of the woman beneath the princess, the fierce spirit that had captivated Liam and now intrigued him. Alara, in turn, began to see cracks in Cale's stoic exterior. She observed moments of vulnerability, flashes of pain that hinted at a tragic past. She learned that he had lost his mate many years ago, a devastating blow that had hardened his heart and driven him to seek solace in power and prophecy. The loss left Cale cold, detached and dedicated to his role as king. She saw the loneliness that haunted his eyes, the burden of responsibility that weighed upon his shoulders. She began to understand that his obsession with the prophecy was not simply about power, but about finding a way to heal his kingdom, to bring hope back to a land scarred by loss and despair. One afternoon, while Alara was resting in her chambers, the castle healer, a wizened old woman named Agnes, paid her a visit. Agnes was a kind and gentle soul, her eyes filled with ancient wisdom. She had been tending to Alara's health, monitoring her pregnancy and offering her words of comfort. "My dear," Agnes said, her voice low and conspiratorial, "be wary of the king. He is a powerful man, but he is also a desperate one. He seeks to control the prophecy, to bend it to his will. He sees you and your child as tools, instruments to be used for his own purposes." Alara's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Agnes shook her head sadly. "I cannot say too much," she replied. "But trust your instincts, child. Protect yourself and your baby. The king's intentions are not as pure as they seem." She squeezed Alara's hand and then departed, leaving Alara alone with her thoughts, consumed by a growing sense of dread. The healer's warning confirmed her deepest fears. Kale was using her, and his true motives were far more sinister than she could have imagined. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Alara's sleep grew increasingly restless. Vivid dreams, far more potent than mere imaginings, began to plague her nights. They were visions, glimpses of a future inextricably linked to the prophecy, swirling with images of light and darkness, of hope and destruction. In one dream she saw her child standing on a precipice, bathed in golden sunlight, its outstretched hand capable of either healing the land or plunging it into eternal shadow. In another, she witnessed Kale, his face contorted with greed, wielding a dark energy that threatened to consume the entire kingdom. These dreams were not comforting premonitions. They were disturbing warnings, whispering of a dangerous path ahead. She awoke each morning with a lingering sense of dread, her heart pounding with the weight of responsibility. She tried to decipher the meanings of these visions, searching for clues that would help her navigate the treacherous waters surrounding her. But the dreams were fragmented and symbolic, offering no clear answers, only cryptic hints and unsettling possibilities. As the days turned into weeks, Kale's experiments became more intrusive. What had begun as simple observations evolved into subtle manipulations, attempts to unlock the hidden potential within her unborn child. He subjected her to strange rituals, chanting ancient incantations and drawing arcane symbols on her skin. He fed her exotic herbs and elixirs, claiming they would strengthen her and prepare her for the fulfillment of the prophecy. But Alara felt violated, her body and her mind, treated as instruments for Kale's grand design. She felt like a puppet, her strings pulled by a master puppeteer who cared nothing for her well-being. She tried to resist, to assert her autonomy, but her protests were met with polite but firm resistance. Kale reminded her of their agreement, of her obligation to fulfill the prophecy. He assured her that his actions were for the greater good, that the future of the kingdom depended on her cooperation. But his words rang hollow, his explanations failing to mask the underlying ambition that fueled his actions. One night, driven by a desperate need for answers, Alara decided to explore the castle. She had noticed a hidden chamber, a room that was always locked and guarded, a place that seemed to radiate a dark and forbidden energy. Under the cover of darkness, she slipped past the guards, her heart pounding in her chest. She used a hairpin to pick the lock, her hands trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. The chamber was filled with strange and unsettling artifacts. Books bound in human skin lined the shelves, filled with arcane symbols and forbidden knowledge. Alchemical instruments cluttered the tables, bubbling with strange concoctions. And in the center of the room Alara found what she was dreading. A large, intricately designed altar, stained with blood and surrounded by candles flickering with an unnatural light. She recognized the symbols etched into the altar, ancient sigils associated with dark magic, spells designed to control and manipulate the very fabric of reality. A wave of nausea washed over her. Kale wasn't simply trying to fulfill the prophecy. He was trying to control it, to harness its power for his own selfish gain. He wanted to become a god, to rule over the kingdom with absolute authority. He was willing to sacrifice anything, even her child, to achieve his twisted ambitions. Armed with this knowledge, Alara confronted Kale. She found him in his study, poring over ancient texts, his face illuminated by the flickering candlelight. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling with rage. "What are you doing with dark magic?" Kale looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. He quickly composed himself, his face hardening into a mask of indifference. "I do what is necessary to protect my kingdom," he said, his voice cold and dismissive. "That's a lie. Alara retorted. You're not trying to protect anyone. You're trying to gain power, to control the prophecy for your own selfish ends. You're willing to sacrifice my child to achieve your ambitions. Kale sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of his centuries. You know too much, he said, his voice laced with regret. I had hoped to keep you in the dark, but it seems you are more perceptive than I gave you credit for. He paused, his eyes narrowing. Yes, Alara, it's true. I intend to use your child to gain ultimate power. The prophecy is not simply about balance and prosperity. It's about control. And I intend to seize that control for myself. He then revealed a final devastating truth. And by the way, Kale added, a cruel smile twisting his lips, I knew about Liam all along. I orchestrated your meeting. I knew he would be the perfect catalyst, the perfect human to father the child of prophecy. The words hit Alara like a physical blow. Betrayal pierced her heart. Kale had manipulated her from the very beginning, using her love for Liam as a pawn in his twisted game. She was nothing more than a puppet, her life orchestrated by a master manipulator who cared nothing for her feelings or her well-being. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Rage consumed Alara, a firestorm fueled by betrayal and manipulation. She would not allow Kale to use her child as a weapon, a tool for his twisted ambitions. She would not stand idly by while he plunged the kingdom into darkness. Escape was her only option. She had to protect her baby, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Under the cover of darkness, Alara prepared her escape. She gathered a few meager possessions, a cloak to shield her from the elements, a waterskin to quench her thirst, and a small knife to defend herself. She knew the castle was heavily guarded, but she had memorized the layout, identified the blind spots, and devised a plan. She would use her werewolf senses to navigate the shadows, her agility to scale the walls, and her cunning to outwit the guards. As she slipped through the corridors, she felt Kale's presence, a dark and ominous energy that seemed to permeate the very stones of the castle. He was aware of her intentions, she knew it. He was watching her, waiting for her to make a mistake. But she pressed on, her determination fueled by the image of her child, safe and free from Kale's grasp. She reached the outer walls, scaling them with practiced ease, her werewolf claws providing purchase on the rough stone. She dropped to the ground on the other side, landing silently in the shadows of the forest. Freedom was within her reach. But her escape was short-lived. As she ran through the trees, she was surrounded by Kale's guards, their faces grim and their swords drawn. They had anticipated her move, cutting off her escape route. There's nowhere to run, Alara, one of them said, his voice cold and mocking. The king knew you would try this. Defiance surged through her. She would not surrender without a fight. She drew her knife, her eyes blazing with anger. Stay back, she warned, her voice trembling but firm. I will not let you take my child. But the guards were too many, too strong. They swarmed her, their swords clashing against her knife. She fought bravely, her werewolf instincts taking over. But she was outnumbered and outmatched. She was weakened by her pregnancy, her movements hampered by the weight of her belly. In the end, she was subdued. Her knife wrestled from her grasp and her arms bound behind her back. The guards dragged her back to the castle, her dreams of freedom shattered. As she was led through the gates, she saw Kale standing in the courtyard, his face impassive. He did not speak, but his eyes conveyed a clear message. She was his prisoner and there was no escape. Alara was imprisoned in a more secure location, a dungeon deep beneath the castle. The walls were cold and damp, the air thick with the stench of mildew and despair. She was confined to a small cell, her only company the rats that scurried across the floor. Her freedom was completely restricted, her every move monitored. Kale visited her the next day, his face devoid of emotion. You have disappointed me, Alara, he said, his voice cold and distant. I had hoped you would cooperate, but you have proven to be rebellious and disobedient. Your escape attempt has only confirmed my suspicions. You possess dangerous knowledge that could threaten my plans. He paused, his eyes narrowing. I will not allow you to jeopardize the prophecy, he continued. I will take whatever measures necessary to ensure its fulfillment. From now on, you will be under constant surveillance. Your contact with the outside world will be completely severed. You will be nothing more than a vessel, a means to an end. Kale's resolve hardened, his determination to control Elara and her child intensifying. He saw her as a threat, a wild card that could disrupt his carefully laid plans. He would not allow her to defy him, to challenge his authority. He would crush her spirit, break her will, and mold her into the obedient instrument he desired. Elara gazed at Kale, really seeing him for the first time. He had indeed become a monster, consumed by his quest for power. He truly believed in what he was doing, but was blinded by ambition, unable to see the truth. Elara considered that Kale was using dark magic and may be mad. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Hope flickered within Elara. She may be imprisoned, but the fight was not over. A desperate plan formed in her mind, a dangerous gamble that could either save her child or cost her everything. She would challenge Kale for the Alpha title. It was a long shot, a near impossible feat given her weakened condition and Kale's immense power, but it was her only chance to protect her child from his clutches. Under the ancient laws of the werewolves, any member of the pack could challenge the Alpha for leadership, provided they could prove their strength and worthiness. The challenge involved a trial by combat, a brutal test of skill and endurance that would determine who was fit to lead the pack. Elara knew she was at a disadvantage, but she had one thing Kale lacked: the fierce love of a mother, a primal instinct to protect her child at all costs. That night, Elara summoned the guards to her cell. "I demand an audience with the Alpha King," she said, her voice resonating with newfound determination. The guards scoffed, dismissing her request as a futile gesture. "The king has no time for your games, prisoner," one of them said. "He has more important matters to attend to. Tell him I challenge him for the Alpha title," Elara declared, her eyes blazing with defiance. The guards were taken aback, their expressions shifting from amusement to disbelief. "You dare challenge the king?" one of them exclaimed. "You are in no condition to fight. You are weak, pregnant, and alone." "My condition is irrelevant," Elara retorted. "I have the right to challenge him, and I will exercise that right. Tell him I invoke the ancient laws. Tell him I demand a trial by combat." The guards hesitated, unsure how to respond. They knew that the ancient laws were sacrosanct, binding even upon the Alpha King. They could not deny Elara's request without violating the very foundation of their society. Finally, one of them relented. "Very well," he said. "We will inform the king of your challenge, but do not expect him to accept. He will likely dismiss you as a fool." The news of Elara's challenge spread like wildfire throughout the castle, creating a buzz of excitement and disbelief. The courtiers and advisors whispered amongst themselves, speculating about Kale's reaction and Elara's chances of success. Most dismissed her as a madwoman, a desperate prisoner clinging to a faint glimmer of hope. But a few saw her as a symbol of defiance, a spark of rebellion against Kale's tyrannical rule. Kale was initially amused by Elara's challenge. He saw it as a pathetic attempt to assert her power, a futile gesture that would only end in her humiliation. But as he considered the implications, he realized that he could not simply dismiss her request. To do so would be to undermine his authority, to show weakness in the face of defiance. He had to accept the challenge, to crush Elara's spirit and reaffirm his dominance. He summoned Elara to his throne room, his face an impassive mask. "You have challenged me for the Alpha title," he said, his voice cold and formal. "Do you understand the consequences of your actions? Do you realize that you are risking your life?" "I understand perfectly," Elara replied, her voice unwavering. "I am willing to risk everything to protect my child." "Very well," Kale said. "I accept your challenge. The trial by combat will take place at dawn in the arena. May the strongest prevail." The preparations for the Alpha Challenge began immediately. The arena, a vast amphitheater located in the heart of the castle, was cleared and prepared for the battle. The weapons were sharpened, the armor polished, and the magical wards reinforced. The entire kingdom held its breath, anticipating the clash between the Alpha King and the pregnant princess. Kale prepared meticulously, honing his skills and fortifying his defenses. He spent hours meditating, focusing his energy and summoning his inner strength. He consulted with his advisors, strategizing and planning his every move. He knew that Elara would be a formidable opponent, Despite her weakened condition, she possessed a fierce spirit, a cunning mind, and the unpredictable power of her unborn child. Elara too prepared for battle. She spent her waking hours training, pushing her body to its limits. She practiced her fighting techniques, honing her reflexes and sharpening her senses. She meditated, connecting with her werewolf spirit and drawing strength from her love for her child. She knew she couldn't match Kale's strength and experience, but she could exploit his weaknesses, his arrogance, and his reliance on dark magic. As dawn approached, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. The entire kingdom gathered in the arena, their eyes fixed on the two figures standing at opposite ends of the battlefield. Kale, the Alpha King, the powerful and ruthless ruler, and Elara, the pregnant princess, the exiled outcast, the desperate mother fighting for her child's survival. The battle for the Alpha title was about to begin. Kale's strength was unmatched. Years of experience leading his people, unmatched knowledge of dark magic. Compared to this, Elara's youth and inexperience seemed almost laughable. But Elara had one thing Kale didn't. She was fighting for something much bigger than herself. The battle was fierce and brutal. Kale unleashed his magical attacks, his spells crackling with dark energy. Elara dodged and weaved, using her agility and speed to evade his strikes. She retaliated with her own attacks, summoning the power of her werewolf spirit to strike with surprising force. Subscribe now to continue to the story. The arena erupted in a cacophony of sound. The clash of magic against magic, the snarls of shifting werewolves, and the gasps of the assembled crowd. Kale, with a flick of his wrist, sent bolts of dark energy searing through the air, forcing Elara to dive for cover behind a crumbling pillar. He was relentless, his attacks precise and powerful, each one designed to weaken and overwhelm her. Elara, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, retaliated with her own bursts of energy, channeling the raw power of her werewolf form. She lunged, her claws extended, attempting to land a blow on Kale's armored chest, but he parried her attack with ease, sending her sprawling across the sandy ground. Kale laughed, a cold, cruel sound that echoed through the arena. "Is this all you have, Elara?" he taunted. "I expected more from the mother of the prophecy. It is clear you are no match for me. Surrender now, and I promise to make your death quick." Elara struggled to her feet, her body aching, her breath ragged. But she refused to yield. She had come too far, risked too much to back down now. She would fight until her last breath. For her child, for her freedom. She channeled her werewolf rage, letting the primal instincts take over, her eyes glowing with feral intensity. She launched another attack, a whirlwind of claws and teeth, pushing Kale back, forcing him to defend himself. But even with her enhanced strength and agility, Elara was weakening. The pregnancy was taking its toll, draining her energy and slowing her movements. Each blow, each dodge, each spell cast chipped away at her reserves, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. Kale saw her fatigue, sensed her weakening resolve. He pressed his advantage, his attacks becoming more relentless, more brutal. He unleashed a particularly devastating spell, a swirling vortex of dark energy that slammed into Elara's chest, sending her flying backward. She crashed into the arena wall, her body racked with pain. She slumped to the ground, unable to move, her vision blurring. Kale approached her, his face a mask of triumph. "It is over, Elara," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You fought bravely, but your efforts were futile. I am the Alpha, and I will not be denied." He raised his hand, preparing to deliver the final blow, a killing curse that would extinguish her life and secure his victory. As Kale prepared the final blow, a surge of energy coursed through Elara's body, an unexpected and uncontrollable force. The mixture of her werewolf and human blood, combined with the potent life force of her unborn child, created a phenomenon that defied all logic and understanding. A shimmering shield of light erupted around her, deflecting Kale's killing curse with ease. The energy pulsed with a warm golden light, pushing back against the dark magic that threatened to consume her. The shield was powered by the unborn child, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. It was a miracle, a testament to the power of love and the indomitable spirit of a mother. Subscribe now to continue to the story. The unexpected shield, shimmering with golden light, not only deflected Kale's deadly curse but also unleashed a surge of energy that coursed through Elara's veins. The fatigue that had been weighing her down vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline, a potent cocktail of werewolf strength and maternal fury. She felt invigorated, revitalized, as if a dam had burst within her, unleashing a torrent of untapped power. She rose to her feet, her eyes blazing with newfound intensity, her body radiating an aura of raw, untamed energy. Kale, caught completely off guard, stumbled backward, his face etched with shock and disbelief. He had never encountered anything like this before, a force that defied his magic and threatened his control. He realized then that he had underestimated Alara, had failed to comprehend the true power of her unique heritage and the unwavering love that fueled her actions. Alara seized the opportunity. She launched a counterattack, a flurry of blows that caught Kale by surprise. She moved with blinding speed, her claws tearing at his armor, her teeth snapping at his throat. Kale, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, struggled to defend himself, his movements sluggish and clumsy. He tried to unleash another spell, but Alara was too quick for him. She slammed into him, her body a whirlwind of fury, disrupting his concentration and preventing him from completing the incantation. He staggered backward, his face contorted with pain and frustration. The dark magic that had been coursing through him seemed to falter, its power diminished by the radiant energy emanating from Alara. Kale, weakened by his reliance on dark magic, found himself vulnerable. The shield that had protected Alara seemed to drain his power, leaving him depleted and exposed. His movements became labored, his breathing shallow. He realized, with a growing sense of dread, that he was losing. The balance of power had shifted, and he was no longer in control. Alara pressed her attack, relentless and unforgiving. She struck with the force of a mother protecting her young, her every blow fueled by love and determination. She fought not for power, not for glory, but for the survival of her child, the innocent life that depended on her strength. This pure, selfless love amplified her power, making her a force to be reckoned with. Kale's strength was diminishing more with every passing second. She unleashed a final devastating blow, a surge of werewolf energy that slammed into Kale's chest, shattering his armor and sending him crashing to the ground. He lay there, defeated and broken, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and disbelief. He had been so close to achieving his goal, so certain of his victory. Now everything was slipping away, his dreams of power crumbling to dust. As Alara stood over him, her body trembling with exhaustion but her spirit soaring with triumph, she realized that she had not only defeated Kale but had also broken free from his control. She was no longer a pawn in his twisted game, but a warrior, a protector, a mother who would stop at nothing to safeguard her child. The power of love had triumphed over the darkness, and a new chapter was about to begin. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Kale, his defeat palpable in the dust-coated figure sprawled before Alara, was not one to concede. Realizing the tide had turned, and faced with the agonizing prospect of losing everything, he clutched at the last vestige of his power, the forbidden magic he had so recklessly embraced. A desperate glint sparked in his eyes, a manic energy surging through his weakened frame. He began to chant, his voice a raspy incantation that sent shivers down the spines of those who still dared to watch. The air crackled with dark energy, the shadows lengthening and twisting as the forbidden magic responded to his call. Alara felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she recognized the incantation. It was a spell of immense power, a dangerous ritual that could tear the very fabric of reality. She knew she had to stop him, but she was exhausted, her body battered and bruised from the battle. The residual energy from the protective shield thrummed within her, a potent force, yet she was unsure if she could summon it again. Kale continued chanting, his voice growing louder, more frenzied. The ground beneath them trembled, and the sky above darkened, as if the heavens themselves were recoiling from the dark magic he was unleashing. A swirling vortex of shadows formed around him, its tendrils reaching out like grasping claws, consuming the light and filling the arena with an oppressive sense of dread. He was sacrificing everything, his body, his mind, his very soul to the dark magic. He was willing to destroy the kingdom, to unleash unimaginable horrors, rather than relinquish his grip on power. He would rather rule over a wasteland than submit to Alara and the promise of a new future. Suddenly the vortex imploded, releasing a shockwave of dark energy that rippled outwards, tearing through the arena. The stone walls cracked and crumbled, the magical wards shattered, and the assembled crowd screamed in terror as the darkness washed over them. Alara shielded her eyes, bracing herself against the force of the blast. When the dust settled, Kale was gone. In his place stood a monstrous creature, a grotesque parody of his former self. His body had been twisted and contorted by the dark magic, his features warped into a horrifying visage. His skin was a sickly shade of green, his eyes glowed with malevolent energy, and his hands had transformed into razor-sharp claws. Wings, leathery and black, sprouted from his back, casting a long, ominous shadow over the arena. Kale had become a monster, a living embodiment of the dark magic he had so foolishly embraced. The monstrous creature snarled, a sound that was both animalistic and chillingly human, its voice a distorted echo of Kale's former self. He was no longer the Alpha King, the stern but just ruler. He was a creature of pure chaos and destruction, driven by an insatiable hunger for power. The spell had backfired in the most spectacular and horrifying way imaginable. Instead of granting Kale ultimate power, it had corrupted him, twisted him into something unrecognizable. He was no longer in control of the magic. It was controlling him, driving him mad with its insatiable hunger. The monstrous Kale surveyed the scene, his eyes burning with malevolent glee. He flexed his claws, reveling in his newfound power. He was a force of nature, unstoppable and invincible. He would tear down the kingdom, destroy everything that Kale had built, and reshape the world in his own twisted image. He prepared to attack. The dark spell was complete. A monstrosity had been unleashed. The kingdom was doomed. Subscribe now to continue to the story. The monstrous Kale unleashed a deafening roar, a sound that shattered the remaining windows of the castle and sent tremors through the kingdom. His rampage began immediately, a whirlwind of destruction and chaos that left a trail of ruin in its wake. He tore through the arena, his claws rending stone and steel as if they were mere paper. The terrified crowd scattered, their screams echoing through the air as they fled for their lives. Monster Kale, heedless of the carnage he was causing, turned his attention to the castle itself. He smashed through the walls, tearing down towers and collapsing roofs with terrifying ease. The once imposing fortress crumbled before him, reduced to a heap of rubble and dust. The kingdom, once a symbol of strength and stability, was now under siege, its foundations crumbling under the weight of Kale's monstrous rage. Alara watched in horror, her heart pounding with guilt and despair. She had unleashed this monster. Her actions had led to this destruction. She was responsible for the chaos that was engulfing the kingdom. She knew she had to do something, but what could she do? She was weakened, pregnant, and facing a creature of immense power, a being fueled by dark magic and driven by insatiable rage. She was faced with a difficult choice. She could try to kill Kale to end his rampage and save the kingdom. But to do so would mean risking her child, exposing it to the dark magic that permeated the air. The battle could kill them both. Or she could try to find another way, to reach the sliver of humanity that might still remain within the monstrous form, to save them all. The first option was the easier path, a swift and decisive end to the chaos. But it was also the most dangerous, a gamble that could cost her everything. The second option was fraught with uncertainty, a desperate hope that might prove futile. But it offered a chance, however slim, to save not only the kingdom but also the soul of the man she had once respected. As she watched Monster Kale tear through the castle, his roars of rage echoing through the air, Alara made her decision. She would try to save him. She believed that there was still a spark of humanity within that monstrous form, a flicker of the man Kale once was. She had seen it in his eyes, in those fleeting moments of vulnerability, in the glimpses of pain that had haunted his stoic exterior. She knew it was a long shot, a desperate gamble that could cost her her life. But she couldn't abandon hope. She had to believe that love and compassion could triumph over darkness and rage. She had to believe that she could reach Kale, that she could remind him of the prophecy, of the hope for the future, of the kingdom he had sworn to protect. With a deep breath, Alara gathered her strength and prepared to confront the monster. She would face him not as an enemy, but as a healer, as a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. She would appeal to his humanity, remind him of the Good. Her child deserved the chance to grow up in a peaceful world, free from the shadows of Kale's mistakes. With this in mind, Elara began running toward the chaos. Subscribe now to continue to the story. Elara steeled her resolve and stepped into the path of destruction, her voice ringing out amidst the cacophony of chaos. "Kale!" she cried, her voice echoing across the ravaged courtyard. "Stop this madness. This isn't you." Her words seemed to momentarily pierce the monstrous rage. As Monster Kale paused in his rampage, his glowing eyes focusing on her with a flicker of recognition. It was fleeting, quickly replaced by a snarl, but Elara had seen it. A spark of the man he once was, buried beneath the layers of dark magic. She pressed on, her voice filled with compassion and urgency. "Remember the prophecy, Kale. The hope for the future. The kingdom you swore to protect." She walked slowly towards him, her hands outstretched in a gesture of peace, her pregnant belly a visible testament to the future she was trying to save. "You were a good man, Kale. A just ruler. Don't let this darkness consume you." She was getting closer, close enough to see the pain swirling within the monster's eyes, the desperate struggle for control. "The magic, it's too strong," Monster Kale rasped, his voice a distorted echo of his former self. "I can't stop it." He clawed at his head, as if trying to claw out the darkness that was consuming him. Elara reached out and touched his arm, her hand trembling. "Yes, you can, Kale. You're stronger than this. Remember who you are." She focused all her energy, all her love, into that single touch, trying to anchor him to his humanity. "Think of your kingdom. Think of your people. They need you, Kale. They need you to fight this." The monster flinched at her touch, recoiling as if burned. But then a strange thing happened. The dark energy surrounding him began to flicker, the shadows receding slightly. His monstrous features softened, his eyes losing some of their malevolent glow. "Elara," he whispered, his voice barely audible, but filled with a profound sadness. "I'm sorry." Tears streamed down Elara's face as she saw the man she had once respected, the man who had carried the burden of his kingdom with such stoic grace, struggling to break free from the darkness that had consumed him. "It's not too late, Kale," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You can still save yourself. You can still save your kingdom." Kale stared at her, his eyes filled with pain and regret. "There's only one way," he said, his voice filled with a grim resolve. "I have to destroy the magic." He closed his eyes, focusing all his remaining will. Elara could feel the energy building within him, a force that was both immense and destructive. He was gathering all the dark magic that had corrupted him, preparing to unleash it in a final devastating act. "No, Kale, don't," Elara cried, fearing what he was about to do. But it was too late. Kale had made his decision. He opened his eyes, his gaze filled with a profound sense of peace. "For my kingdom," he whispered. With a final surge of energy, Kale unleashed the dark magic, not outward but inward, consuming himself in a blinding flash of light. The monstrous form convulsed, then shattered into a million pieces, the dark energy dissipating into nothingness. As the light faded, Kale was gone, leaving behind only silence and the faint scent of ozone. He sacrificed himself and all his magic. The monstrous Kale was no more. The kingdom was saved. He was gone. Subscribe now to continue to the story. The silence that followed Kale's sacrifice was deafening, broken only by Elara's ragged breathing and the distant cries of those still trapped within the ruined castle. The dark magic, once a palpable presence, had vanished, leaving behind an emptiness that was both unsettling and liberating. The storm clouds that had gathered overhead began to dissipate, allowing slivers of sunlight to pierce through, illuminating the devastation and hinting at a new dawn. Elara knelt amidst the rubble, her body aching, her heart heavy with grief and relief. Kale was gone, his reign of darkness brought to an end, but at a terrible cost. He had sacrificed himself to save his kingdom, redeeming himself in his final act. She honored his memory, acknowledging the good that had once resided within him, the just ruler who had been corrupted by power and despair. His sacrifice had granted them all a second chance. Days turned into weeks. The kingdom slowly began to heal, its people emerging from the shadows of fear and despair to rebuild their lives. The ruins of the castle were cleared, the wounded were tended to, and the land was once again cultivated. Alara, despite her grief, became a beacon of hope, her courage and compassion inspiring the survivors. She walked among them, offering comfort and assistance, sharing stories of Kale's sacrifice and reminding them of the importance of unity and resilience. The time came for Alara to give birth. In a small makeshift cottage built amidst the ruins of the castle, surrounded by the healer Agnes and a handful of loyal servants, Alara brought a healthy child into the world. A girl. The birth was difficult, but filled with a sense of profound joy and anticipation. The child was seen as a symbol of hope, a testament to the enduring power of love, and the promise of a brighter future. The baby had a tuft of white hair, and one blue eye and one brown eye. The kingdom rejoiced at the news of the birth, seeing it as a sign that the prophecy was indeed being fulfilled. Alara's child was not just a symbol of unity between werewolves and humans, but a living embodiment of it, a bridge between two worlds that had long been divided by fear and prejudice. As Alara cradled her newborn daughter, she knew that her life had changed forever. She was no longer just a princess, an outcast, or a survivor. She was a mother, a leader, and a symbol of hope for a kingdom yearning for peace and prosperity. She was ready to embrace her destiny, to guide her people towards a new era of understanding and cooperation. Alara stepped forward, assuming the mantle of leadership with grace and wisdom. She united the kingdom, bringing together werewolves and humans, nobles and commoners, under a banner of equality and justice. She established new laws, promoting tolerance and understanding, ensuring that all citizens were treated with respect and dignity. She invested in education, arts, and sciences, fostering a culture of innovation and creativity. The kingdom flourished under her rule, becoming a beacon of light in a world shrouded in darkness. She never forgot Liam, the human traveler who had captured her heart and fathered her child. She honored his memory, ensuring that his story was told, his courage and kindness remembered. She often visited the grove where they had first met, whispering her love to the wind, knowing that his spirit was always with her. Alara found strength and purpose in her role as a mother and a queen, leading her people towards a future where love and understanding triumphed over fear and prejudice. Her reign was long and prosperous, remembered as a golden age in the kingdom's history. She was known as Alara the Wise, the queen who had united her people and ushered in an era of peace and prosperity. And the baby grew into a symbol of unity, just as the prophecy had foretold. The tale of Alara, the princess who was disowned for loving a human, the Alpha King who sought to control the prophecy, and the child who united two worlds, became a legend, a timeless reminder of the power of love, the importance of sacrifice, and the enduring hope for a brighter future. Subscribe for more great stories.